Right, Mike, so every year we get questions about insurance and boiler testing and stuff like that.
We do.
And some of it, you can understand why people don't understand it. Some of it you'd think was obvious. So we're just going to run through a couple of different things and...
Quite correct, Rod, and with the change to the new regulations, it seems to have generated a little more doubt in members' minds.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so let's start with the really basic then. I mean, every year members get an insurance certificate.
We do.
I mean, I've got a number of different locos, but clearly something like this one, it weighs about 3.5 kilos, but it's a battery diesel outline loco. So no boiler testing, obviously, or anything like that.
No boiler, no test.
Indeed, yeah. So, I mean, if I drop that on my foot and it smashes to smithereens, the insurance certificate and everything is totally irrelevant, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. If you've got your own home damage insurance, then hopefully that'll pick it up.
Yeah, otherwise it's just...
Otherwise, I'm
okay.
afraid it's down to you.
But what if I've got friends in the garden and I drop it on their foot? Is that a different case?
Then you're covered by the club insurance.
Okay, so if they turn around and say, I've been off work for a week, I want £5,000 off you or whatever, they're probably not going to get that, but
you
we
can
can go to the
certainly
insurance.
put a claim in under the insurance, and the insurer will investigate it, and if appropriate, they'll pay
Take it on. And presumably the same sort of thing if it's at an exhibition and it comes flying off a corner and hits some kid.
Absolutely.
Right, okay. And how should they do that? Presumably, same as any insurance, you don't admit any liability, and what, they drop you a line, they give you a ring?
Give us the details to the owner of the locomotive. The owner of the locomotive should then contact me as the company secretary, and I will put it in hands of the insurer.
Right, okay, so they shouldn't be doing anything.
They
It all
shouldn't be
comes
doing
to you.
anything. Put it to us, we get in contact with the insurer will then deal with it.
Right, okay. And so that's the certificate. Now, what about, I mean, this is an almost new roundhouse steam loco, so obviously it's got a boiler. It came from the manufacturers, it's got an owner's handbook, and in the back here it's got, I think, there we go, there's the right page. So there's a boiler certificate and there's a gas certificate.
And they cover the loco for life, with the only caveat is if you ever do any work on the boiler itself or on the gas tank itself, not the associated pipe work, actually on the boiler or the gas tank, then it would need a retest. Other than that, it does not need any further boiler testing.
Right, so all this stuff that I've heard about, you know, an annual test or you know, going to somebody's model engineering society and they want to do a boiler test on it and all that sort of stuff. Where am I really at with all of that?
Let's deal with the steam test. As an association, we recommend that every member tests each of his locos on an annual basis in steam.
Right, but I don't have any of the kit to test it or anything.
Doesn't matter. You fire up your loco as normal, as if you were going to run it. You check what the pressure gauge is reading. You have a good look round it for any leaks.
Right.
Job done. Provided, do the paperwork as ever.
Right, okay.
We've got a form. The form's available on the website. Fill in the form. You can do the test yourself. You need to get it witnessed by somebody independent.
Right.
That could be your wife, your son, your brother, or another member. Doesn't have to be a boiler tester.
Terrific.
Right.
Okay.
Right, the next thing to consider then is you're taking your loco to a model engineering society.
Okay, right.
And as most people probably are aware, more and more of these societies are putting in gauge 1 and 16mm tracks.
Yeah.
So, despite this being adopted by all the associations, the situation is that model engineering clubs can have additional rules locally if they want.
Right, so that's despite the fact that we've got
Despite
our own insurance.
the fact the insurance, the rules adopted nationally, they can still put in an additional rule, and it's not uncommon that model engineering societies will want to do a boiler test.
Right.
Even if you've got your certificates with you, and we'd recommend that you take them, even if you've got your certificates, they may still want to do a boiler test.
And that's even with these small locos that are well under 3 bar limit.
Absolutely,
Right,
absolutely. And if they insist, you've got a choice. You either submit to their test, or you put it back in the box and go home.
Yeah, which is fair enough, I suppose.
It's fair enough. It's their track. It's their rules.
Yeah. Well, what about? I mean, we've got 50 plus area groups across the UK. We've got them overseas as well. Hopefully, they all accept your association.
I've never heard of anybody that doesn't.
No, that's always a good sign, isn't it? Okay, so and that's even if, I mean, it's almost brand new loco. It's got a manufacturer's certificate and everything, but you still might find the odd group that insists.
You might.
Right. Okay. I think that's then down to your own choice, isn't it?
It's freedom of choice. Up to you which way you want to do it.
Okay. So, and obviously, if you build your own boilers, what about if you buy a boiler in, but you're building the rest of the loco? So, there's one or two well-established commercial boiler makers. They presumably will issue you with a certificate.
If you've got a certificate from the commercial boiler maker, same applies as if you bought the loco complete with a certificate.
Right. Okay.
Don't need to do another test.
Right. So I suppose the other scenario is, and I mean, I've always bought my locos new from the supplier, but I know you and others have bought ones that maybe somebody's passed on, or just off eBay or something like that. Sometimes they come with documentation. Sometimes there's nothing. What's the situation?
My
with that?
experience is more frequently they come without.
Yes.
So, for instance, I bought this Bertie off another member.
Right.
It was a bit tired when I bought it, and I had it re-liveried. Very smart now, but it didn't come with paperwork.
Right. Okay.
So, with no paperwork, you've got to submit it to a full boiler test. If you want to run it in other people's sites, be fully covered, there's no absolute obligation to do so.
Right.
But we would recommend, if you haven't got a certificate, get it tested. There's plenty of society boiler testers around, or your local model engineering club. Either will do.
Right, okay. So, I mean, if I just wanted to run it in my own garden and I was confident, I'd had a look around it, I'd done the annual steam test that we talked about earlier, looked like the pressure gauge was working, the safety valve was working, should be okay. But
should be okay, and if it's only in your own garden, it's your risk, you do it.
Right, okay. And if something did go wrong when the niece, the cousin, whatever came round, is under 3 bar limit, is it still covered by the insurance?
Still covered by the club insurance, third party liability. Put the claim in as we previously discussed.
Right, okay. So, hopefully that's made those bits and pieces clear. So, battery ones, if you drop it on somebody's foot at a show, it's covered by an insurance, nothing else to worry about. Manufacturers' ones come with the test and everything, covered by our public liability insurance. But if you go to certain places, you might still be asked to do their local boiler test. As you just said, one of the things that the association has done for many years is had our own boiler testers across the UK. I think there's about a dozen, 15 at the moment.
Yeah, about 15.
Yeah, okay.
Different parts of the country. We try and make sure geographically we cover as much as we can.
But yeah, okay.
Yeah, there'll always be the odd hole if you live in the far west of Cornwall or the northwest of Scotland or something, then you might have to travel.
All right. So let's move some of this stuff out of the way, and then you're going to show us how we do a boiler test.
Yeah.
Right, Mike. So talk us through then. This is a bare boiler that you're going to test, as if it had been just made in the workshop.
As if it had been just made, though in fact this is a roundhouse one off a loco that I've modified and fitted an alternative coal-fired boiler to. But the same rules apply. So you seal up all the openings. You can either use bungs or you can use the existing kit. We generally got the fittings to go on the turret from the safety valve. Connect it up, and then the rules say that we've got to do it at twice working pressure. So a standard roundhouse type boiler, 40 psi, twice pressure, 80 psi. So we pump it up, and the key is to pump it up slowly and to keep looking. You're looking for dribbles, any little bubbles coming off. If you've got a slight weep from a joint, that's not an issue. A joint where a fitting goes on, obviously if it's on the end plates or where the turret's mounted, that's a different matter. So we'll bring this up. That's 80 psi now, and we'll just leave it there. Leave it there for a few minutes. Generally speaking, I like to leave it about 10 minutes, just to make sure that there's nothing untoward, a gentle seep. You sometimes get it where the boiler's been soldered, there's a little bit of flux, and if you leave it up for a time, the flux will weaken and it'll push out. So a few minutes, you might find that the gauge just drifts down the test gauge, but that's no problem. It's perfectly allowable to just give it another couple of pumps to just see that works.
And presumably this is also a way of checking the accuracy of the gauge that's on the boiler itself.
Yes, you can use the opportunity to check the gauge. In fact, that's just about crack on, which is not always what you find. These little gauges, plus or minus 5 or 6 pounds, are not unusual.
And is there anything you can do about that if you...
No, not really. Just note it. Note where you put your red line as well.
So say that one was under reading by 5 psi. Where would you put your red line?
It'd be a good idea if it was under reading by 5 psi at the 40 mark, your working pressure, just put the red line a little beyond the 40.
Right.
I'm just checking now, it's up to pressure. I'm checking down, check where the fire tube is, or if you've got boiler tubes, check the boiler tubes, check the plates, any other area. There is no leak on there. I'm satisfied. We will turn that off. So we'll release the pressure. Job done. We just need to do the paperwork, and we'll talk about paperwork in a minute or two.
So, and you only do it once, do you? You don't have to put it up several times?
No,
or...
gradually increase the pressure and then leave it for, say, I like to leave them 10 minutes just to check.
Okay. So that's great, that's a boiler that, as you say, it's a bare boiler. But if you've got a locomotive that you've just bought off somebody, I mean, somebody like myself, I'm not an engineer, I don't like taking it apart. To get this boiler test, are you saying we're going to have to strip it down to that?
No. If it's a complete loco, it's the boiler tester's view that prevails. So if the loco is in a good external condition, there is no need to have it stripped down. But it is in the boiler tester's gift as to how much he wants to see. Now, normally speaking, if I was testing a commercially built loco or even a home built loco that's in a good condition, I wouldn't insist on the boiler stripped down. And it's as simple as that. If the loco showed signs of having had a hard life, shall we say, then it might be a different matter. And again, it's the boiler tester's view. I might say, well, can you take the smoke box off please so that I can see the end? Yeah? But I might in the end say, well, I'm not very happy, I would like to see it all.
And presumably the boiler testers, they're all fairly experienced modelers, so they'd be able to help with something like that if it was necessary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that often, or is it more...
No, to
Okay.
be honest, if things are so battered that you're going to be considering that, there's probably more to worry about the owner and the loco than just a boiler. But it's a choice.
And when you do the tests, do you find that there's often a problem with a boiler, or...?
I think in the 40 or 50 I've tested, I've had one that had a significant weep on,
Right.
and we had to ask for it to be to go back to be soldered up. If we're talking about home built boilers, and there are quite a few people that build their own now, you need to talk to your tester at an early stage. Talk to him, discuss what you're proposing to make, what the design is, where you've sourced the material from, and it's then up to the boiler tester how much he wants to see. Generally speaking, I'd like to see the boiler with one end cap soldered on and the other end cap still to be soldered, so that I can look from both sides the standard of the soldering. Then I would ask the builder to complete the boiler as the bare boiler, and then we could submit it to a further visual inspection and then a hydraulic test.
Okay, so a little bit more work then if you're home building, a little bit more difficult if it's a long travel between you and the boiler tester.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, a more professional test, everybody can be more confident about it.
Absolutely. And as I say, the important thing is, at an early stage, talk to your boiler tester, because you can discuss what he'll want to see. If you've built bigger scale boilers on the past and never had problems, then he might be willing to say, well, we'll just submit it to a test. He doesn't have to see everything, it's entirely in his choice.
Okay, and I mean, it's not like the MOT, you're not paying a fee to the association?
No.
If it does fail, again, you'll have a discussion with the boiler tester and discuss how you're going to proceed.
How we're going to rectify it.
Yeah.
And you know, even if you live some distance, there are ways round these things. I've met people because I've been in the area to visit a heritage railway. There is the possibility of having a test done at a show somewhere where you could both go. There are a number of ways to get round these things.
What about people who want to send you a box of boilers in the post and get you to test them for them?
A box of boilers might be a different matter. A one-off, if someone wants to post his boiler to me, I'm quite happy to test it then. I would expect him to give me a prepaid to return it.
Yes. Okay, so now we've got the loco. I think you said you bought it second-hand and no paperwork, is that right?
Bought second-hand, no paperwork, so we need to do a test. As we previously discussed, it's a loco in a decent condition. We don't need to strip it down. We can do the test in situ and just examine around. So again, we bring the pressure up. Because we've got no paperwork, this is required to be done at the 2 times figure. So again, roundhouse loco, 80 psi. PSI, and now giving it a good look. See, let's remove the driver out the way so we've got a bit better access. Keep the pressure up there.
Again, you're just looking for weeping glands.
Just looking for weeping, looking for any bubbling, any distortion just in case. Particularly with all the fittings being on and being a second-hand loco, there's no signs of leaking from any of the fittings, which could be a sign of the use of incorrect water and the desinkification process of the brass. But that's all looking good. Again, we leave it up there for the 10 minutes. Once happy as a boiler tester, and incidentally, of course, this being my own loco, I'm using this as an example, but I can't test my own loco. But again, that's all looking splendid. So we'll release the pressure. And we're done.
Okay, and that's tested the boiler. It's tested all the associated connections, I suppose,
Yes,
as well, hasn't it?
yes.
So the sight glass, if there is one.
Yeah.
The pressure gauge on the loco.
Yeah.
The only thing it hasn't tested is the safety valve, but
Absolutely.
I suppose if you at least know now from the boiler test how the pressure gauge is reading on the loco, if you now progress to a steam test, you know that pressure gauge is working and therefore you can check the safety valve.
Absolutely, but we can do safety valve testing. If people want a safety valve setting, we can do that as well.
Okay, and then there's paperwork that goes with it. So is that 2 copies? I can't remember now. You keep a record.
I keep a record in a logbook, but the single certificate is handed to the loco owner.
And how long is that valid for?
That's valid for life.
Right.
Unless, again, he does any alterations to the pressure circuit, in which case it's subject to a retest.
Okay. Well, I mean, that all sounds pretty straightforward to me. I don't really know what all the fuss has been about. But,
well, no, neither do I, but I think there's just a fear factor. People have spent a lot of money on their loco, and there's just a fear factor. Oh, what if it fails? What do I do? And there's a worry. But the likelihood of a failure of a well-built boiler, either commercial or home-built, is very, very slim.
And this is obviously all the steam circuit that we've been talking about. A lot of these locos are gas-fired, and I know there's been some concern about the gas tanks and the new codes. So how do those fit into the situation?
Right. Gas tanks are now subject to testing as well. What people don't realise, the pressure that you put in your gas tank on a cold loco is one thing, but consider your loco once it's up to temperature, or even worse, the scenario where you perhaps have a cab fire. You can then be going up to significantly increased pressures. So the test regime now requires you to test gas tanks to 400 psi.
Gosh, that's a lot. And is that the same for both butane and
yes,
gas?
It's a standard test regardless of the gas used. And the reality is, although locos frequently say butane only, most of us use mixed gas, particularly in winter running, and that's a higher pressure. So it makes sense that we test to the worst scenario, which is the 400 psi.
And we've got the team of boiler testers. Are they also testing gas tanks?
They're going to be equipped to test gas tanks as well.
Do we know roughly when that's going to be? That's not so they can't do it at the moment in 2018.
It should be in place early next year.
Right.
But again, it's a one-off test. It doesn't need repeating.
And if in doubt, contact your local boiler tester.
Contact your boiler tester and they'll make arrangements.
Yeah. Okay. Right, that's terrific, Mike. So just to wrap this up then, we've got this almost new Roundhouse Silver Lady. It's come with all the certificates and everything else, but I haven't done a test myself. I mean, I know it blows off at roughly what it should be doing, but for safety's sake, we're just going to have a look at it.
Right. So we'll do a hydraulic test. That test, as a repeat test, is only at 1.5 times pressure.
Okay.
So up to 60 psi. While we're at 60 psi, we'll check its fitted pressure gauge as well.
Right.
And then we'll go on and we'll do a steam test.
Right. Okay.
So
all we're having to do then is just take the safety valve.
take the safety valve out.
Because I know this, you know, for somebody that's not an engineer and everything else, it's a
If
nervous
you've
thing.
not
Somebody
done it
says they want to do
before.
a boiler test.
Yeah. So safety valve out. We need to fill the boiler with water.
Okay. Whoops.
Let's try not to spray it everywhere.
And is it full, or is it the
Full.
usual?
No, full.
Right. Okay. So not like when you're going to steam it and you take
No,
30
we're not
mil out.
taking the 30 mil out that the instructions say. We're going all the way to absolutely full.
Should be getting there, I would have thought.
Yeah. There we go.
Lovely.
Now, fit the adapter.
With the boiler test kits, you've got a number of adapters, haven't you? Just
Yeah.
in case somebody
Yeah.
has something a bit odd.
We try and cover most things. You might catch us out, but if it's got most things are fairly standard, but we do try and have a list of everything, and we try and keep everything.
Right.
And if there was something odd, I'm lucky enough to have the capability that I can make adapters. Though technically it is the owner's responsibility, but we're not so hardline, or I'm not anyway. Right, off we go then. Have you left the regulator open, Rod?
Ah, that's a very good question.
Oh no, there we go.
I'll tell you what I might have done. I might have left the whistle valve open a bit.
We are leaking somewhere.
Yeah, we're getting the leak out of the whistle.
Yes, I think we need to close your whistle valve.
Okay. So that's quite interesting then. I mean, obviously this is not a, although it's a new loco, it's got an extra whistle attached to it.
Yeah.
So again, I suppose it's all part of the circuit. And,
It is.
Worth testing.
We need to just make sure that all relevant valves, blow down valves, whistle valves, regulator are all closed.
Okay, so it's a radio controlled one. We'll turn that on. Right, in theory, that should now be closed.
Right. Up to 60 psi, 1.5 times working pressure. We'll have a look at the gauge. The gauge is reading a fraction low, but it is only a fraction. Certainly not something to worry about. There's a little leak weak from the whistle valve, but that is not something that should concern us. we give it a good look round now. That water is just coming from the whistle valve and is nothing to concern us at all, and the test is successful.
Okay, that's terrific.
So the last thing to show now is to show a live steam test.
Right, okay, let's get some gas out then.
Final thing is to show you how to do an annual steam test. So we're using rods almost as new, Lady Anne. We've filled up as you would normal for a run. We've lit it up and it's now slowly coming up to steam. I'm going to come round the other side, Rod, so that I can see the gauge better. We're now just coming up to pressure. The gauge on the loco is correctly marked with a red line at 40 psi. So we're going to watch for the safety valve lifting and check, and there we go, the safety valve is now lifted. It's bang on the 40 psi at the red line. I can't see any other leaks around the loco, which is just how it should be, and that's great. Now what we're going to do is to turn the burner up now to maximum heat, and we want to see that the pressure doesn't rise by more than 10%. This is just to check if the burner went flat out, can the safety valve still dump the required steam? So we'll just leave that going for a moment or two. You can see the safety valve now is fully blowing off. And the gauge is nice and steady on the 40 psi mark, so that's excellent. And we'll now turn the gas down again, and we'll just see when the safety valve closes.
So this is the procedure that we recommend as the association that you should do annually, and as you said earlier, record on the
sheet,
which people can download. I think it's a Word document, a PDF, isn't it?
It's a PDF document from the website.
And do safety valves have a life as such, Mike? Would you expect to have to replace one, or?
You shouldn't have to replace them. The thing with them is, if you're using tap water, particularly in a harder water area, the difficulty that you'll have is that it will fur up like your kettle does, and then you need to clean it. The procedure again is very easy. Take your safety valve out, stick it in overnight in a cup, jar or otherwise, without getting caught by the household authorities, of vinegar, white vinegar being better. Leave it overnight, then give it a good swill out with water, and just test it again to see that it's still going off at the right pressure. And that's okay. That's splendid.
And again, doesn't take very long, does it?
Doesn't take very long.
We spent probably about 10-15 minutes, I suppose, just to, it's very cold in here despite being inside a building.
Yeah. But it's no real difficulty that you're doing no more than when you fire up your loco anyway. So if when you're at the club or a garden meet, get somebody else to just watch it, stick his initials on the piece of paper, job done for another year.
Okay, so just to finish off then, Mike, there's always an element of paperwork to these things. So we've got the certificate now for the actual boiler test, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got, you can print these off the company website. There's one for the hydraulic test, and for convenience I double side print them, and there's one for the annual steam and safety checks. So if we just look at the hydraulic test, description of the model, so in this case, it's a Silver Lady. I know it's a Silver Lady, so it's a Silver Lady. Year of manufacture, if we know it. I guess this is a new one, 2016, Rod?
The manufacture on the documentation for the boiler and everything is 2017.
2017. Manufacturer is Roundhouse.
Yeah.
The owner is Rod Nipper. The certificate number, each boiler tester has his own number series. I use BGRA, being Butterley Garden Railway, / and then a 3-digit number.
Okay, and that's then repeated in your...
And that's repeated in my logbook.
Yeah.
So boiler identification, we can look that up. I've not looked it up, but there'll be a Roundhouse boiler number. The working pressure is 40 psi. I can look the volume up, or I can measure it to calculate the bar litre. The material used, it's a copper boiler, because we know that Roundhouse used copper, which is better, and it's a single flue. We know that the boiler is made by Roundhouse, and it's the same year as the loco. And the initial hydraulic test, that's on the Roundhouse certificate. The second hydraulic test, it passed. It was done today, which is the 14th of December 2018. The inspector is myself. I sign it. It was witnessed. Well, in this case, we're using it for filming purposes, so it will be Rod's name that goes in there. The expiry date, there is none. The test location was Butterley. There are no comments to make, and that is complete.
Okay, so that's one that would be produced by a boiler tester.
By a boiler tester.
Okay, and
now,
then the other one that you've got there was related to the annual steam test.
It's the annual steam and safety checks. You can do it yourself, so sequentially number them yourself. Certificate applies to the loco complete. Is there a pressure gauge fitted? Yes. The range, it's the standard 0 to 80. Safety valve set to list at 40 psi. Red line at 40 psi. Date of inspection 14/12/18. Butterley, general condition excellent. Safety valve lifted at 40 psi. Gas tank safety check, we looked at that, that was okay. Sign it. Job done.
And that's really all there is to it,
and that's it.
Okay.
There is nothing too complicated. Just a final word on brass boilers. The continental manufacturers, or if you've got an older locomotive, it may well have a brass boiler. Brass boilers are subject to a test at 1.5 times every 3 years. And that's important. The simple reason is because of the risk of the so-called dezincification of brass, which can weaken the boiler over time. Again, if you've got any doubts, talk to your boiler tester. Your boiler tester will put you right. And that's it.
So just to go over that again, like with the brass boilers then, so I mean there's quite a bit of the German narrow gauge models that are made with these brass boilers.
Regner being perhaps the more famous manufacturer, and they use brass in their boilers, and I think that's fairly common across continental Europe.
So with those ones then, they'll obviously, if they come from somebody like Regner, they'll have a manufacturer's
They'll have
test
a manufacturer's test at 2 times, but every 3rd year you need to submit them to testing again at 1.5 times.
Okay, and that's, again, like we said earlier, is if you want to run in public with them.
In public.
Again, depending on the bar litre, I don't know. The chairman has some quite large boilers. I don't know whether they're over the 3 bar limit. But again, covered by our insurance?
Yes, still covered by our insurance. You'd be surprised how big you've got to go to get over the 3 bar litre. You know, you really are up to big garrets before you're exceeding it.
So most of the stuff that we're likely to get in 16mm then, probably not an issue.
Not an issue.
Great, well let's hope people are clearer now on insurance and boiler testing.
Let's hope so.
And if they've got any questions, you're on the 16mm website.
Yep.
They can just email.
They can email me, company secretary, email me off, and I'll do my best to answer questions.
And if they want a list of boiler testers to see if there's one near them, I think that's either on now or due to go onto the website.
That'll be on the website shortly.
Or again, they can get in touch with Mark, the technical director, by email.
And he'll point you in the right direction.
Yeah. I think the only other thing to say really is, like all the rest of the association, boiler testers are volunteers.
Yep.
They do have a home life.
And they do like to play trains sometimes
and they do like
as well.
to play trains, yeah. But they won't necessarily go out to a garden meet with their boiler testing kit. And equally, they won't be particularly happy if you just turn up on their doorstep and demand a boiler test. So it is about being respectful of the volunteers and making an appointment. And
absolutely.
Yeah.